How do you start angel investing? This answer might take a minute or two. So, angel investing is the idea of investing into small private companies, buying equity into the company, and then trying to help them grow. Think about Shark Tank or Dragon's Den. That's sort of the idea, but you're doing it as an individual. How do you get started in this? There's several different ways. There are platforms out there where you can create a profile, verify yourself, and they will show you companies that are raising money right now, and you can do your due diligence and invest through the platforms. There are also networks in almost every city across North America of angel investors where they will get together once a month and they'll bring in companies to pitch in front of the group of people. Some of them are paid, some of them are free. There's also networking events, startup competitions, stuff like that in your community. If you're in a city of at least 500,000 people or more, there's probably something for angel investors to invest into locals companies. The other way, and the thing that I've realized after doing a couple of deals now, is the best companies to invest in, or at least the companies where I have had success, do not need those things. They do not need to go and plead to a network of investors to raise money. They do not need to go and pay a platform a service to raise money. The best companies have investors lining up at their door competing to get in. And so one thing you might want to consider here, and at least where I've had my success, is I look in the real world and I look for real companies that I think have major opportunities, and I approach them and I ask to make an investment into their company. So far, based on my portfolio, the ones that are doing well, that's how I found them. And so that might be something to think about and consider as you go through your day-to-day life and as you interact with different people, is what company do I think is going to do extremely well? And if I find one like that, I should approach them. I should not wait for them to hopefully land on one of these platforms or go to one of these networking events, because the best companies, it's usually not hard to raise money. Now, if you live in Canada, there's a couple of things that you may want to consider. The US is pretty similar, but it's just like tweaked a little bit different. If you want to make investments like this, you either need to be friends and family of one of the executives or one of the founders, or you need to be an accredited investor. There's a couple of different ways to become an accredited investor. One is making over $200K per year for 2 years consecutively. The other one is over $1 million in liquid assets, excluding your house. And I think there's one or two other ways as well, depending on your situation. Now, if you don't qualify for either as an accredited investor or friends and family of the founder, then you probably shouldn't be doing this. It is extremely high risk. There are a lot of scammers out there. There's a lot of companies that are raising money that probably aren't going to make it. Most companies probably aren't going to make it, especially at this smaller stage. And so it is extremely risky. The reason they have those requirements is to make sure that you fully understand what you are getting into, and you can manage and hopefully have the intellectual knowledge to realize how risky it is. And so that is definitely something to think about and consider. Now, once you find one of these companies that you want to approach, and hopefully other people see the same thing, you might realize that, hey, I'm a small check here. Like nobody wants 1,000 investors. They'd rather have 1 or 2 investors so they don't have to deal with all the phone calls. And so you want to try and think about, like, if they're going to raise enough money, and let's say that there's extra investors lining up at the door, what makes you different? Why would they take your check versus somebody else's check? Especially since as an angel investor, our checks are probably going to be small. They're probably going to be in the $10,000 to $100,000 range. That's usually the size. Now, what you might want to think about is, why would they choose you? For me, I can hopefully provide a little bit of knowledge in certain areas, and with my social media channels, maybe I can send some customers or drive some traffic. I kind of use that to my advantage as a reason to say, hey, this is why you should take me on as an investor over somebody else if this round gets oversubscribed, and if you have too much money or too many investors, this is why you should take me. Now, unfortunately, it's probably not like what you think it might be on Dragon's Den, where they're negotiating and they're bartering back and forth and they're saying 10% for 100,000, 5% for 75. Like there's none of that actually happening. And the reason is, When as an angel investor, we're probably, let's call it $25,000 out of $1 million raise or a $500,000 raise. So we're a small little chunk of it. And so what's going to happen is the largest investor is going to come in and they're going to be the lead investor, and they're actually going to set the terms of the deal. They're going to say, here's the valuation that I am buying in at for 500,000 of your $1 million raise. I'm going to give you 500K. You need to go find the other 500K from smaller investors. Here's the terms of the deal. And then all of those other smaller investors basically sign on at the same terms. And so if I'm coming into a $1 million raise with a $25,000 check, I'm looking at the terms of that deal and seeing if it actually fits my investment profile, but I don't have a whole lot of ability to go back and forth and say, hey, I want a higher percentage or a better valuation or anything like that. That is very tricky to do, especially as an angel investor. One area where, like for me, for instance, I could say, well, okay, no problem, I'll sign on for that valuation, but if I bring in X number of customers, I want to make a commission or an affiliate on that or some type of remuneration. You could do something like that if you wanted to. But again, you have to realize that you're a small check in that $1 million raise, and most people would rather have fewer investors than a huge, massive number, depending on the business.